Good morning. Welcome to another Morning Java brought to you by our friends at the Get Go Cafe and Market, where something they got recently in like the pre-made food section, they have these little teeny pinwheel wraps. They come in little sets. I think that's one of my new favorite things to get there. You just grab them and go. They're pretty good. They have a couple different kinds. Check them out. Yeah, like I said, good thing to get on the go. So we're recording this on Wednesday. Bombshell news with the Penguins. Jim Rutherford resigned. Out of nowhere, citing personal reasons, not health-related. He confirmed to you, and David Morehouse told us on a conference call. And then Patrick Alvin promoted to interim GM. He was the assistant GM, director of amateur scouting. So interim GM for now, and they're starting the search for Rutherford's permanent replacement. I mean, Dave, how much of a shock was this to you?
Total, at the very least. Really did not see that coming. And in retrospect, I don't know that I feel all that bad about it, because when I spoke with Jim Rutherford on Wednesday evening, he said this was not something that he had considered for very long, that it was, although he wouldn't elaborate on the reasons for his decision, he said it wasn't something that he had been contemplating for a while, that this all developed over the fairly recent term. And David Morehouse said that he first learned of Rutherford's intentions on Tuesday night. So, this was a rapidly developing situation, and it's one that, caught a lot of us unprepared.
Yeah, and to reiterate, not health related. I know a lot of people thought that might be it. Something Morehouse said on the call that Rutherford walks 5 miles a day, which is, I don't even do that. I've never walked 5 miles in one time. But yeah, not health related. Just wanted to step down, and I mean, not the greatest time to do it. Short season. So I mean, the search is on. I mean, who are some candidates you think that are available, or in assistant positions with other teams who they could be looking at?
Well, the one guy that I think they would be interested in, if he's interested in them still, would be Jason Botterill, who just signed on as assistant GM in Seattle. After he was fired in Buffalo last spring, there was very strong mutual interest with Botterill and the Penguins for him to return here, where he had been an assistant and associate for Rutherford. But he still he was still being paid by the Sabres for a couple of years, and the Penguins obviously weren't looking to spend money because of all the revenue they lost during the pandemic. So nothing ever came of it. And then Ron Francis, the GM in Seattle, swooped in recently and offered Botterill a contract. And Botterill was actually in town last Friday scouting for Seattle, and he seemed genuinely enthused about being part of a group that was going to build a franchise from the ground up. So I don't know if he would still be interested in returning to Pittsburgh. I know he still has a very strong ties to this organization, but if he is interested, I have to believe that the Penguins would be interested in him as well. So we'll see where that goes. If not for him, I was kind of interested that Morehouse really swatted away the idea of bringing in somebody to kind of do an organizational rebuild. That he said the emphasis is going to be on somebody who's in full win now mode, which I'm not completely sure about the wisdom of that, but it's pretty clear that they're going to try to squeeze everything out of this core group that they can, if they haven't done so already. And they're apparently intent on going all in to try and win another cup sometime in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, back to Botterill. So you saw him there scouting for Seattle one game. I saw him there 2 games where I was there without you. So he's been in town for a while now, I guess. I don't know. He wouldn't be the first hire Seattle made that would leave for another opportunity. I mean, they hired Alf Samuelsson there early on, and then he left to Europe, and now he's with Panthers. So I mean, yeah, guys could still leave Seattle even though they haven't played a game yet, so that's an option. Morehouse did say that Patrick Alvin, the current interim GM, would be, he's a serious candidate. So I mean that's an option. Something I know a lot of fans are asking about. His name always pops up whenever there's an opening. Can we put like the Pierre Maguire talk to rest?
I would be quite surprised if Pierre Maguire were a serious candidate for this. I mean, because this search is being conducted according to Morehouse by Morehouse, Ron Burkle, and Mario Lemieux, and none of them are going to go out and pay for a billboard to advertise their plans on it. So it's conceivable that they could have interest in Maguire and we wouldn't know it, but I really don't see that as much of a possibility. He and Ray Shero, who was Rutherford's predecessor, were very good friends. They went to college together, remained close for a lot of years, and to my knowledge still are. So I think the chances of Maguire doing something with or for the Penguins, in addition to his work for them back in the early 90s, were a lot better when Ray Shero was calling shots around here. I really don't see him as a viable candidate at this point.
No, he does interview every couple of openings. I think the Arizona job I think he interviewed for. I mean, he interviewed for after Shero left. He said on a podcast recently that he was like the runner-up to Rutherford, which I would take with several grains of salt. But I mean, yeah, so we can probably put that to rest. But I mean, what do you think is the pressure to get this done quickly?
Geez, that's hard to say because I don't really have a good feel for just how much Patrick Alvin knows about the job. And he doesn't have an assistant. He was the assistant. For a lot of years, Rutherford had guys like Jason Botterill and Billy Guerin and Tom Fitzgerald, who were he was grooming and who handled a lot of things so that Rutherford didn't have to. As of right now, Patrick Alvin is kind of a one-man GM show. Morehouse said on Wednesday that Mario Lemieux will consult him on hockey issues and give him input and stuff, but I don't think you're going to be seeing Lemieux coordinating scouting meetings or anything like that. So Patrick Alvin is going to have his hands full, and if it gets to be too much for him, I think they might try to accelerate the process. But I do think it's more important to hire the right person for the job than it is to get somebody into the job quickly.
Yeah, search starts now. All right, Dave, it's never a slow news day. And some of the news affecting Penguins right now, it seems like they lose a defenseman every game or so, maybe two. I have the full list right here just because it's a lot. So just to rattle them off: Mike Matheson, upper body injury. Longer term, he's been skating for a couple days now in a non-contact jersey. Juuso Riikola, longer term. Marcus Pettersson, week to week. They both got injured January 19th, 2-in-1 game. Zach Trotman, he was injured sometime in camp and underwent surgery to repair a torn meniscus, out 4 to 6 weeks. He probably would have been on the taxi squad. And then the most recent ones, Brian Dumoulin, last game, lower body injury. He was still being evaluated last we heard. And then John Marino, he got banged up at the end of the third period, came out for overtime. But neither of them were in Penguins practice on Wednesday. And then we didn't hear from Sullivan yet at the time we're talking. So we really don't have an update for them. That's, a lot of defensemen out. What's going on? What can they do?
Yeah, it's not just a lot of defensemen, it's their top 4 left side defensemen. Yeah. And at this point, the left side is so cursed that John Marino, who is a righty but had been playing on the left side, also got hurt. So you you can't escape it simply by being right-handed. I mean, it's really remarkable to go through so many defensemen, in 7 games, and then to have them, be your top 4 on one side is just, I mean, it's mind-boggling. You figure that, Ricola, you probably weren't even expecting to necessarily see him in a game by this time, unless somebody had been injured or was really struggling. And he's already moved all the way up through the depth chart and onto the injured list. I mean, it's really remarkable. And, they're going to have to really do some work to patch together a capable defense. I mean, on Wednesday, they signed Yannick Weber to a contract. He's a pretty reliable, steady veteran presence, a good depth guy. Given the Penguins' current circumstance, that probably means that when he finally gets into the lineup, whether it's Thursday or whenever, probably log 45 minutes. They're just so shorthanded back there. But, I guess part of the challenge of succeeding in this league is being able to overcome adversity. And the Penguins certainly are experiencing a lot of that on their blue line already.
Yeah, and then but even Weber, I mean, he's right-handed, which is really not what they needed, given that all their injuries are to the left side. But I mean, Weber, he was available. He NHL regular for the past couple seasons with Nashville. He did attend their camp on a PTO, didn't make the cut, so he hasn't been playing anywhere. He was available. He was a defenseman they didn't have to trade for, which is what makes him appealing. But again, he's right-handed. I mean, the other guy, there's one defenseman left on the taxi squad, and that's Kevin Churchman, who is left-handed. Played on the right side in Wilkes-Barre last year pretty much the whole season, so he can't play on both sides. But I mean, lefty, that's his natural side. But I mean, Kevin Churchman, he hasn't played in an NHL game since the 2013-14 season. That was his rookie professional season. Not ideal.
He got all of 13 games that season, so he's not exactly a wash in NHL experience.
Yeah, I mean, and of the healthy defensemen, I mean, Marino, before he went out, he really was kind of struggling. CC hasn't been that great really all season. He was a healthy scratcher a bit there. Letang hasn't looked great. I mean, it feels like Pierre-Olivier Joseph is their best defenseman.
Yeah, and I checked today. He has just under 40 minutes of NHL experience, on ice experience. So
yeah,
he's the rock back there right now.
Yeah, and I mean, last game after they lost Dumoulin, Pierre Joseph was the guy that stepped up and played on the top pairing with Letang, so he could be getting even more big minutes moving forward. But I mean, he's looked solid. The first 2 games, he actually led all Penguins defensemen in shots. It was 3 shots and then 2, not a lot, but no one else was taking shots. He was. And
he hasn't been around long enough to know that he's not supposed to.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody has to get comfortable in the system.
Yeah, and then he's so good at he's a tall guy, long reach. He's just so good at forcing opponents to the outside and really breaking up chances of cutting off scoring lanes. So I mean, he's been great, and yeah, I probably didn't think he'd get into the lineup this early in the season, and it's looking like he's going to be their top pairing defenseman. So
yeah. He's probably the only pleasant development on their blue line this year. And if nothing else, he's got his health going for him.
There's that. All right, Dave, speaking of pleasant development, something that has not been a pleasant development, really the play of the second line, but in particular Evgeny Malkin, really up until last game, I mean, they haven't looked good as a whole. Malkin really hasn't been scoring even strength. The second line did change last game after Evan Rodriguez went out. Brian Russ moved up to the top line. Second line is now Zucker, Malkin, Kapanen, and it looked like they were clicking more last game. But I mean, what have you seen from the second line and in particular Malkin?
Well, we saw very little for the first 6+ games. Malkin, I thought, especially in the third period on Tuesday, finally started to look like himself on a consistent basis. There had been, the occasional flash in the first half dozen games, but in general, he was accomplishing very little and looking bad doing it. But probably from the midpoint of the third period on Tuesday, I thought he really looked assertive, engaged, made a couple of really nice passes to Kapanen. The first one that sent him on a breakaway that he didn't score on. The second that led to Kapanen's goal that tied the game, that put it into overtime. And then, Malkin nearly won the game a little less than a minute and a half into overtime when he beat Tuukka Rask with a shot, but it went off the crossbar. And then, of course, he had the chance to win the game on the 3-on-0 break when he opted to throw an errant pass to Chris Letang rather than throwing the puck past Rask to send us all out of the building. But I thought that was a pretty rare blemish on his final 25 or so minutes of work. I think there was an awful lot. I think he did more good in the last half of the third period on Tuesday night than he might have in the previous 6 games and 2 periods combined.
Yeah, you said he looked engaged. That's just the biggest thing, because we talked about it the last episode we did, or the one before that. The first series I covered, the one against Washington at home, he just looked like he was floating around out there. And then I know, a couple days ago, Dayan wrote a column from when he was at the Rangers game, saying the same thing, that he looked like he was just coasting around out there. But we did see more speed, energy, engagement the last game. And we're seeing more out of the guys that are on his line too. Kapanen, he got elevated to that line. I think he's looked good since he came in. They've kind of been easing him in. Zucker really didn't look that great for a couple games there, but I thought he looked better last game too. He was on that second power play unit. The second power play unit, I think, the first game against Boston was better than the first, for sure. Zucker scored there. There was a weird shot, went off O'Connor's foot, then the can bounced off of Bruin. But yeah, things look like they're starting to come together.
Yeah, and especially with the problems on defense, the injury issues they have back there, they're going to almost certainly have to win some high-scoring games. And to do that, you better have at least 2 lines producing goals on a pretty regular basis. If they can get the second line going, I like the chances of the Crosby, Gensel, Rust line producing. That could at least give them a fighting chance until they start to get some bodies back on defense.
Yeah, and then with Malkin, Sullivan the other day, paraphrasing what he said about, if he's concerned about Malkin, he kind of made it sound like what he thinks is with Malkin, just he gets in his own head when he's not playing well. And it sounded like Sullivan thinks that, once he can just get 1 goal, that the floodgates will open and he'll start to feel like himself, play more like himself. So, and from watching Malkin, I believe that if Malkin can just get one good bounce, we'll see him back up at the level that we're used to seeing him play.
It really is amazing how important confidence is to players, even players who have world-class ability. If they hit a drought, sometimes when the puck's not bouncing right for them, or they're just a little bit out of sorts, it's amazing how quickly their confidence can fade, and it becomes a vicious downward cycle for them. On the other hand, if Malkin is feeling it in a positive way after the way he finished the game on Tuesday night, there could be a positive carryover, that would last an awful long time.